The wallet was in a glass case between a broken watch and a pocket knife nobody wanted. Brown leather, worn at the corners. A small circular stain on the front cover that I recognized before I even picked it up. My father used to rest his coffee cup on his wallet every morning at the kitchen table. I was 12 years old the last time I saw that wallet. I was 43 years old, standing in a pawn shop in Dayton, Ohio, and my hands were shaking so badly the woman behind the counter asked if I needed to sit down. I did not need to sit down. I needed answers, because my father had been missing for 11 years. And his wallet, with his ID still inside, had just been sitting in a glass case, priced at $8. Let me take you back. My father's name was Gerald Marsh. Jerry to everyone who knew him. He was the kind of man who fixed things, not just around the house, though he did that too, but people, neighbors, strangers in parking lots with dead batteries. He had a way of showing up exactly when someone needed him and disappearing before they could thank him properly, which made what happened in March of 2012 feel completely impossible. He disappeared, not dramatically, not in a way that made the news or brought police cars to our street. He left for work on a Tuesday morning, kissed my mother on the cheek, told my younger sister to stop leaving her shoes by the front door, waved at the neighbor across the street, and never came home. His truck was found 4 days later at a rest stop off Interstate 70. Keys in the ignition. Half a cup of coffee still in the cup holder, cold by the time they found it. No note, no phone call, no warning, just gone. The investigation went nowhere. No evidence of foul play, no activity on his bank account after that Tuesday, no phone pings after he left the house, no witnesses who remembered seeing him at the rest stop. The detective assigned to the case, a tired-looking man named Kowalski, sat across from my mother in our living room 3 weeks after my father disappeared and said the words that hollowed her out completely. He said, "Miss S. Marsh, in cases like this, when there is no evidence of crime and no body, the most common explanation is that the individual chose to leave." My mother did not cry in front of him. She waited until he left. Then she sat at the kitchen table in the same chair my father always sat in, and she did not move for a very long time. I was 32 years old enough to understand what Kowalski was implying, old enough to feel the weight of it, but I never believed it. Not for a single day in 11 years. My father was not a man who left. Life kept moving the way it does when something terrible happens, and nobody knows what to call it. My mother kept his coffee mug on the counter for 2 years before my sister quietly moved it to the cabinet. Nobody talked about that either. I got married, had a son, named him Gerald, which my wife thought was old-fashioned, and my mother cried about for an hour when she heard it. I thought about my father every single day, not in an obsessive way, in the way you think about something that has no resolution, like a door that is always slightly open, always drafting cold air into the room, never quite closing no matter how many times you try. 11 years of that draft. Then I walked into a pawn shop on a Saturday afternoon in October looking for a used socket wrench set. The wallet was in the third display case from the door. I almost walked past it. I would have walked past it, except the woman behind the counter bumped the case while she was reaching for something, and the wallet shifted position, and the morning light coming through the front window caught the circular stain on the front cover at exactly the right angle. I stopped walking. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I pressed my hand flat against the glass like that would tell me something. "Can I help you?" the woman said. I told her I wanted to see the wallet in the third case. She unlocked it, handed it to me. The leather felt exactly like I remembered. Same weight, same worn texture at the corners where he used to grip it, pulling it from his back pocket. I opened it. His Ohio driver's license was still inside. Gerald Thomas Marsh. Date of birth, April 14, 1951. His face looking back at me from a laminated card that had been sitting in a glass case in a pawn shop for God knows how long. I put both hands flat on the counter. The woman behind the counter, mid-40s, patient eyes, looked at me carefully. "Sir, are you all right?" I told her that was my father's wallet, that my father had been missing for 11 years, and I needed to know where it came from. Her name was Brenda. She had worked at the shop for 9 years. She did not remember this specific wallet coming in. They processed hundreds of items a month, but she pulled up the intake records on her computer while I stood at the counter and did not move. It took her 4 minutes. The wallet had been brought in 14 months ago, by a woman. The intake record listed her name, her ID number, and a phone number. Brenda looked at me across the counter for a moment, then she turned the monitor around so I could see it. The name on the intake record was not a name I recognized, but the address field, the address the woman had given when she brought the wallet in, that address was 3 miles from the rest stop where my father's truck had been found, 11 years ago. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time. I called my sister first. She answered on the second ring. I told her where I was, what I was looking at, what Brenda had shown me. My sister did not say anything for almost 30 seconds. Then she said, "What do you want to do?" I told her I did not know yet. That was not entirely true. I already knew what I was going to do. I think I had known from the moment I saw that circular stain on the glass case. I was going to find the woman who brought in that wallet, and I was going to ask her how she got it. I want to be honest with you about what I found, because this story does not end the way I thought it would when I was standing in that pawn shop. It does not end the way I needed it to for 11 years. But it ends with something I did not expect. Something that, in some ways, was harder than not knowing, and, in other ways, finally, gave me somewhere to put all that cold air that had been drafting through that open door for over a decade. I found the woman 3 days later. Her name was Patricia. She was 61 years old. She lived in a small house outside of Dayton with 2 cats and a garden that took up most of her backyard. She answered the door on the first knock, like she had been expecting someone, maybe not me specifically, but someone. When I told her my name, she closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened the door wider and said, "You had better come in." Patricia had known my father, not in the way I feared when I was driving to her house. She had met him at the rest stop off Interstate 70 on a Tuesday morning in March 2012. She had been sitting in her car, crying. Her husband had just left her. She had been driving with no destination. She had pulled off because she could not see the road through her tears. My father had pulled in behind her. He had knocked on her window, asked if she was all right. She was not all right. They had sat on a picnic bench at that rest stop for 2 hours. My father had listened to everything, had not offered advice, had not tried to fix it, had just sat with her in the way that some people know how to do, and most people don't. Then, he had walked her back to her car, made sure she was steady enough to drive, and collapsed in the parking lot before he reached his truck. Heart attack, massive and immediate. Patricia had called 911. She had held his hand until the paramedics arrived. He had not regained consciousness. He died at the hospital 40 minutes later. I need you to understand something. There was no mystery, no crime, no other family, no deliberate disappearance. My father stopped to help a stranger who was crying in a parking lot, and his heart gave out. The reason we never knew, the reason it took 11 years, was a combination of things that still make me angry when I think about them too carefully. A miscommunication between the hospital and the county, a database error in the identification system, an assumption made somewhere along the line that became a file, that became a cold case, that became 11 years of my mother sitting at a kitchen table wondering why her husband chose to leave. He did not choose to leave. He stopped to help someone. That was the most Gerald Marsh thing that had ever happened. And none of us knew. Patricia kept the wallet because she did not know what else to do with it. It had fallen from his pocket when he collapsed. She had picked it up. She had meant to give it to the paramedics, and in the chaos had forgotten. By the time she remembered, she did not know how to find us. She had carried it for 10 years, feeling guilty about it, before finally bringing herself to let it go. She cried when she told me that. I did not blame her for any of it. I sat in her kitchen for 3 hours. She told me everything she remembered about those 2 hours at the rest stop. Every word my father had said, the way he had listened, the way he had made her feel like her pain was worth someone's full attention. I drove home and told my mother. That was the hardest conversation of my life. But when it was over, when all of it had finally been said, my mother did something I had not seen her do in 11 years. She laughed, not because it was funny, because it was so completely and totally him. Of course, she said, of course that's what happened. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine. He didn't leave us, she said. He never left us. The door that had been drafting cold air into every room of my life for 11 years, I felt it close. Finally, quietly, the way my father would have wanted, without any fuss.